Well, hello everybody out there in internet land. This is Chris from HLX.com with another exciting episode of Topher's Log. This week's episode is going to be a little bit tough for me to talk about. I did some research. I always do some research, obviously, before I go on camera. I don't script these, so a lot of times I'm just going off of little bits of notes that I have in front of me, or you know, just kind of going from memory. This one's a little bit tougher because we're going to talk about a property that keeps coming up in conversation this year for what could or could not potentially be coming to Horror Nights. It came up in conversation last year as well a little bit because of the filmmaker, or one of the filmmakers behind this property. And of course I'm talking about Candyman. Now Candyman is I know that Candyman has its you know, its followers. People love that first film, and it's one of those horror movies that has really aged well. Like, people have gone back and they've sort of reevaluated and studied more the subject matter and the content and what it all means. And if I remember correctly, when it first came out, I don't believe that it had the impact or the sort of the over enthusiasm for it that it has now. I think now, you know, people have sort of, you know, like I said, gone back and reevaluated everything, and you know, really now analyzed the movie and sort of put it in this upper echelon of you know, best horror films of all time type situation. Of course, the first film had Tony Todd, which you know, I think that movie is worth a watch for his performance alone as the titular Candyman character. But the reason why it keeps coming up in conversation is because, of course, Jordan Peele is producing a remake of Candyman. The poor female director kind of keeps getting shoved aside because the Jordan Peele's name, of course, now is a hot commodity. So if his name is attached to anything, he's going to get all the you know, all the identity because it's him. And kind of in a way rightfully so. I mean, like, he sort of earned that right at this point, I think, you know, for you know, because of Get Out and because of you know, Us and stuff. You know, you shouldn't, the poor directors kind of getting the shaft on this one. But if it's a great film, you know, then she should get all the praise that she deserves. But when it comes to Horror Nights, you know, there's a lot of questions about this property in particular. I mean, like, if Candyman was to come to the event this year, I mean, would it be the remake or would it be the original? I think that if it was to come, I think you have a better chance of having the remake be at the event than the original. We could have a situation like last year. You know, Us was not a part of the original lineup last year. It replaced an original property. Us was just like this, you know, I think it was, in terms of the response, Us was a little bit more mixed. Not the House, the movie was a little bit more mixed than Get Out was. I think Get Out was much more of a universally like, oh my God, what the hell is this movie? This movie is it's amazing. It came from Jordan Peele. And I think Us was some people either really dug it or they were kind of like about it. I was somewhere in between that. Like, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's good. But, you know, I gotta go back and watch it a couple more times. And it's one of those movies that as I watch it more and more and more, I get I like it more and more and more. There's a lot of stuff in there that I could really, like, you know, sort of analyze and get behind. So so we could have a situation with this where, you know, Candyman might not be part of the lineup, but, you know, if it does well, and you know, with the sort of reactionary measure that that Universal might have, they could take something away and put this in there. I just don't know if Candyman, aside from the remake and having the Jordan Peele sort of angle to it, if the original Candyman would really be what's the word, excitable for people to have. I know it's one of those like last vestiges of horror IPs that Universal hasn't really mined yet. You know, I just don't know how well people outside of the horror sphere. That's the one thing about, you know, or outside of the Horror Nights sphere. It's so easy to get lost in the fact that us Horror Nights nerds are into this stuff. We're really into this stuff. So it could be, you know, in terms of Candyman, you know, I'm sure people are aware of, you know, most people are probably aware of the Candyman, especially now that, you know, Jordan Peele is producing this remake, is probably causing more people who might not have been totally aware of the Candyman franchise or the character to go back and revisit that. But I'm not sure if it if it has that wide appeal, especially with the original property, and the new one hasn't come out yet, so we don't know how much of an impact that's going to be. If Jordan Peele's name is enough alone to sort of get people on board with it, and for people to, to really embrace this and to, really start getting on board with bringing back Candyman into the lexicon of, pop culture. I think the original Candyman still has this air of not cult status, but it's one of those that people are aware of, and because it's sort of aged well over time, you might have some people who are like, oh, I'll go back and like check this out. But in terms of me, like I said, I was never a huge fan of this franchise. I don't even recall watching the sequels. I know there are two, but I don't recall even watching the sequels. And the first film is not one that I've gone back and revisited a lot. I think I watched it. It was on was it Netflix a couple of years back, a couple months back. I believe I watched it when it was having a Netflix run. But that was a while ago. So, I obviously if it shows up, I'll have to go back and rewatch it again. But I know that there's a lot of Horror Nights fans that want to see it come to the event. But I think that they would be much more willing or open to have the original come to the event and not necessarily the Jordan Peele version or produced version. But we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen really what kind of a movie this is or how good it's going to be. It still seems to be keeping with the tones and stuff like that of the first film. The setting and sort of the rundown apartment complex, like all that stuff is still there. But it looks like they might have switched the gender roles. That's kind of what I got from the trailer. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert on Candyman, so I don't remember how that went. But based on the surface level, it kind of looked to me like they might be switching around the gender roles of it a little bit. I don't know. But I haven't really delved deep into the remake to to really assess that yet. But that's what it kind of looks like to me. But it is what it is. Like the concept that Jordan Peele has me excited. I'm curious to see what he could bring to it, or why he was so attached to it, why he decided to basically produce it. And I believe he wrote some of the script, but why he attached himself to it and didn't want to direct it, or have it be his next project. Because I believe it was after Get Out. Like this was like everyone was clamoring because it's like, oh my God, Jordan Peele might actually direct a remake of Candyman, and he actually went and produced it. He could be trying to give the young female director a bump too. Hey, I'll produce it, you direct it. This could be big for you. So, which is also great as well. But yeah, so when it comes to Candyman, I don't know. It's not a property that I'm really excited about. So, like I said, it was kind of a bit difficult for me to even talk about this because I'm not a super fan of this franchise. So, it is what it is. I think that, like I said, if it was to come, I think we'd get the remake. And I think that Jordan Peele's name on it is what's going to sell it. Especially if the movie is not very good. Let's say for sake of argument, the property is on the lineup. It's kind of late now unless they replace it with something else. So, I don't know. It could be interesting. It could not be. It could be a huge disaster. It is what it is. You never know until you try, right? But anyway, guys. So Candyman, I'm wondering. I think, like I said, I think people are willing to go for the remake. I don't know so much about the original and not the remake. I'm not quite sure where people stand on the remake yet. I haven't really watched the reactions on social media when it comes to the trailer. I think I based on the few things that I did see, it looked like people were on board with the remake. So that's good. But I don't know. I think that with Candyman specifically, especially when it comes to the general public, as of right now, the Tony Todd version is the one that people recognize the most. So, but we'll see. But anyway, guys, that is it for me. So it's Candyman. I don't know. Do you guys want to see it come or not? I think most of you kind of do, but I could be wrong. But like I said, not really my cup of tea. It is one of those properties that I kind of watched when I was younger and didn't really dig it so well. And I've gone back and I've revisited it since then, especially since it's aged well and people now talk about it in a different light. So you go back and you sort of rewatch and you're like, yeah, I could see that. But it's not something that like I get all super jazzed about. Just not for me. I don't know. It's never been a property that I was sort of I gravitated towards. It was one of the earlier films that I saw as a younger horror fan. Way back in the day when we had video rental stores. It was one of those that I would rent or rented in that time frame. But anyway, guys, so that's it for me. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, and we'll see. But anyway, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you later. Bye.